Okay, we're live. Don't say anything embarrassing. You chill. I hate you
chill. Sorry.
It's live on our event page.
Put it live on the New Mexico VP Facebook page, and then I'm going to share it to the event page.
Awesome.
I didn't see it on the VP page.
I see it. I'll share the link.
I see us now. It's a little lagged.
Yeah, there's like a 5-second delay between Zoom and the thing, I believe.
All right, cool.
Where are you on Facebook? Because I see the invite to the event, but what video?
I'm going to put the video in the event page right now.
Oh, I see. It does say online event.
And then if folks want to share this on their org pages.
Yep, doing that now on Instagram.
Cool, videos in the event, and I'll pin it.
So share it as a post?
Yeah, I just like shared the link.
That's not the video though. Well, I'll do that anyway.
Oh, we have one person. We have one person. Hi.
I think that one person's me.
Oh.
Because I have it open. I don't know if you can see. I just wanted to see what it looks like. I can get off.
No, there's a couple people. There's a couple people on.
Oh yeah, now I see another one. Okay, cool.
There's two people on.
Greetings. We're very strange people.
Greetings, humans.
Thank you for a couple of people that are on. We're just waiting for other people to jump on if they want, and we're also just settling in ourselves. So, we're very giggly.
We're very giggly.
Oh, there we are.
Yeah. Looking good. Looking like the Brady Bunch. There's 3 people now. And 1 on YouTube.
Sweet. Welcome, welcome.
Thanks for joining us.
Yes. Blessings to wherever all you are.
Yeah.
Got like 4 people signed on so far. That's including myself.
I'm sure on PAA right now. I'm sharing it and I almost wrote "we are alive" instead of "we are live."
Well, you wouldn't be wrong about either of those things. Those are both very true statements, Sheldon. You wouldn't be wrong about either of those things. Those are both very true statements, Sheldon.
Cool.
So you got 7 folks. Plus 1 on YouTube.
All right, cool.
Elizabeth's on.
Should we get started then, maybe?
Yeah,
I have consensus from the committee. Okay, cool. So hello, everybody that's viewing in, streaming in, wherever, whatever territory you're in, welcome. My name is Julia Bernal. I'm with Pueblo Action Alliance, and I'm one of the members of the New Mexico Venceremos Brigade Committee. And I'll go ahead and let my my relatives introduce themselves as well. I'm one of the members of the New Mexico Venceremos Brigade.
I'm gonna stand you.
I know, I'm sorry. I was all, maybe Onisanmu.
Yeah. I'm Onyesanmu. I am also a member of the New Mexico Venceremos Brigade Committee, also of the All African Peoples Revolutionary Party.
Cool. I can go. Hello, everybody. I'm Sheldon Tenorio, part of the New Mexico Venceremos Committee, as well as Public Action Alliance, too.
Hello, I'm Roberto Roybal. I work with the Southwest Organizing Project, and I'm part of the New Mexico region of the New Mexico Committee. And so I'll just start now.
Yeah, go ahead, Roberto. Go ahead and.
Okay, I'm just going to give a brief introduction about the Venceremos Brigade. The Venceremos Brigade began in 1969. In 1969 in Cuba, they were having a huge campaign to grow sugar to bring in income to the fledgling revolution. It had been going on for 10 years. It was the 10th anniversary of the Cuban Revolution, which triumphed in 1959 in Cuba. And so a group of Americans had gone down for the 10th anniversary. And when the Cubans called on the world to send international brigades to go cut sugar, the U.S., some of the U.S. folks decided that they would organize people here in the United States and send people. So the first contingent of the Venceremos Brigade went to Cuba in 1969. And two brigades went in 69, two in 70. And ever since then, we've sent 51 brigades to Cuba. Last year, the four of us here and were the New Mexico committee folks that went from this area. And we joined the 51st contingent of Venceremos Brigade in Cuba, the 50th anniversary, the 50th anniversary. So we had about 180 people or so down there. And it was the largest contingent in many, many, many years, if not decades. And it was, we traveled throughout the island. The Cubans really threw huge celebrations for us. They were very appreciative. We've been doing constant solidarity work with Cuba, trying to end the blockade, stop the sanctions. Sanctions kill. And New Mexico, we sent a couple of our folks early in the days went on the second and third contingent. 76, we sent people on the brigades. My first brigade was in 1979. I went on the 11th contingent. That was my second time to Cuba. I'd gone in 78 for the International Festival of Youth and Students. So personally, I've been to Cuba with the brigades about, almost 20 times. I'm so invigorated, get so much energy going from the people in Cuba, just seeing what we should have, what they have. They have, you may have heard, they've got free health care, free education through college. There's no unemployment, no homeless people, no houseless people in Cuba. When they have disasters, everybody gets together and helps each other. And, just to me, it's a great example of what we could be. And I wasn't timing myself, so if anybody wants to fill in or take it.
Sure, yeah, thanks, Roberto. Is there anybody from our committee that would just like to explain, like, maybe what they experienced in terms of what it was like maybe visiting a socialist country for the first time, or maybe just some things that maybe felt familiar or totally different? So I don't know if anybody would like to expand on some of those things that they learned while they were in Cuba.
Yeah, I can for sure. I mean, I consider it to be a life-changing experience. I was like one person before I left and another person when I got back, because I saw, like Roberto said, like I saw a country where the people decided that the way that they had been forced to live under capitalism, under US imperialism and colonialism, like they weren't into. And so they were like, they organized themselves collectively to overthrow it. They won. And then they like built the society they wanted to see. And it's just like so much better in every way. And it's not because it's perfect, because it's not. There's no such thing as like a perfect nation, especially while capitalism still exists. But like when they make mistakes, they're like, oh, we made a mistake. How do we learn from this? How do we do better next time? And they like acknowledge it. And they apologize. Like it's just like, it's so different from the United States, where like the United States would be like, we're African, indigenous, and Chicano people, so the United States has been fucking with us for a really long time. The United States would be like, and what are you gonna do about it? Like, we'll never acknowledge it. We'll never say sorry. So just seeing a country that was like owning its mistakes, owning like its successes, owning like its destiny, was really transformative for me, particularly as like an African woman, because that's like the struggle our people are in right now. So yeah, I definitely feel like it changed me for the better in a lot of ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Transformative, that's for sure. There's nothing like going to a socialist country and then coming back to a capitalist one. It's really just like a punch in the gut, right? I know I felt that, and I had to come back to Houston out of all places. So I don't know, Sheldon, I know me and you have had a similar experience, but yet something a little bit different because, you know, of our Indigenous perspective. So I just wanted to hear a little bit from you in terms of maybe something you experienced while you were on the brigade.
Yeah, awesome. Sounds good. Thank you, Roberto, Oni, for sharing as well, and Julia as well for the opportunity to share. Yeah, definitely the perspective from an indigenous lens, literally going from Cuba is where I'm from. It was really awesome to see. It was really awesome to experience. Like Oni said, it's a life-changing experience. You know, I didn't really have too much education about Cuba, the country, or the island, the way things were broken down in terms of like healthcare systems and things like that. That was super awesome to see, and really just mind blowing. And I think a lot of what I took from that experience was really hope, a lot of hope, a lot of light, a lot of compassion, for one another, for just literally how you want to live your life, you know. And being indigenous, we talk a lot about indigenous sovereignty. We talk about rights to self-determination. We think about spiritual law. We think about all of these things, alignment, like, you know, spiritual solidarity when it comes to international solidarity, and even solidarity across Turtle Island. And to be there and experience that firsthand, to hear from people who, like Oni said, organized and won a revolution, and now it's like now they're defending it. It was so awesome to see, and just super uplifting, because being Pueblo, I think a lot about like folks and energy during the Pueblo revolt, and how that was even possible, what it may have taken to even pull that off. And it was really dope just to be able to see that it's possible, you know, that it's tangible, that these systems that we live in here on Turtle Island, that wasn't necessarily built for us in the first place, that there's real hope that we can overcome that, you know, and that we can really build around it. And some of the similarities that I saw when we were going to different communities was like, yo, like folks just love each other. They visit each other. They see each other and they say hello. They say, how are you doing? They share like food and stuff. And it reminded me of like being in the pleb. It reminded me of being at home. And it just felt good. Like it felt like I was visiting other homies, other relatives, you know, like somewhere down the street or in another village, you know, going to somebody else's pleb and saying what up, and, you know, how's it going? And just like literally like the breaking bread with one another, you know, and like that community care and those kinds of we call them traditional core teachings in PAA. And, you know, just how to literally like live and how to move and how to look after one another is really vibrant there in Cuba. And it reminded me a lot about home, you know. It reminded me a lot about like my community, reminded me a lot about my elders, you know, like the intergenerational sharing, the knowledge sharing. It's all there, you know. It's like the same. Literally it's like the same, you know. So it just felt good. Also the food, the food was amazing, you know. And it was really cool because like at home people grow crops, people, you know, break bread with each other, and they take it around like to their elders. They drop it off at their relatives when it's harvesting time, you know. right now folks are looking after their crops at home right now. And, you know, when it comes time to harvest, people will be driving around, taking them to their relatives. And it's just such a joyful way to really look after one another and share. And right now, that's really where my mind goes in terms of like similarities and in terms of like the experience. Um, there was one experience that was really cool for me when we were helping in some of the gardens, was that even though I don't speak Spanish to save, I can't speak Spanish to save my life. We were out there and we were packing up green beans, and we were gonna bring them in for dinner that evening. And the homie that was there, me and him were the one to walk it back to the kitchen. And it was crazy because we were just like looking around and like smiling, and he would say stuff in Spanish, I say stuff in English, but we were looking at the land, and I was trying to explain that like the soil here is really rich. Like I was trying to say like you have really great soil here. And it was like red dirt too. It was like red earth out there. And it was really cool because I was like pointing at the land. I was pointing out like the hills at like the sunset, because we were out there super early, which was dope. And he was able to like understand me through like gestures, through how I was talking about different like landscapes and stuff. And it was really dope. And it was really awesome to have that experience, knowing that like, yeah, we're literally worlds apart, but connected through that like spiritual way, and through that through the land, you know, we're connected through the land in those ways. But yeah, that's part of like some of the experiences I remember.
Awesome, thank you. So we determined that Cuba is one big reservation. Just kidding. No, but just moving on with our agenda a little bit. I think later on we can, if we want to take more questions from our audience to see, you know, get a little bit more experience, you know, perspectives from some of our members here, we can definitely share some stories later. But I wanted to move along to Ponya Sanwu. She's going to give our listeners a little bit of just kind of like a recap of what the structure of the Venceremos Brigade, particularly this 50th anniversary brigade, was something really special. So go ahead, Oni, whenever you're ready.
Cool, I'm gonna share my screen. And this presentation is kind of long for the time I have, so I'm gonna move through it quickly. And if I'm going too fast or cannot be understood, please let me know. And also, can y'all see the slide? Cool. All right, so this is actually a report back presentation that we put together for our very first public report back, which was like really huge and really exciting. It was like mad Indigenous, African, Chicano people in the house. It was really great. So if you went to that, this will be a recap for you. But as Roberta broke down, the Venceremos Brigade is a solidarity delegation to Cuba that was started 50 years ago by youth who are living in the United States. They saw the Cuban Revolution pop off. They were like, we want to help this. The United States sucks. We need to leave Cuba alone. Like, how do we show up in solidarity? The Venceremos Brigade is how they did that. And it's basically, the reason why they did that, the reason why they created the Venceremos Brigade is because, like I just said, as soon as the Cuban Revolution became a thing, the U.S. government was attacking it. So like, it's been over 60 years of the U.S. government engaging in like, you know, economic terrorism in the form of sanctions and the blockade, biochemical, like bioweapon terrorism in the form of like introducing diseases, straight up like blowing up airplanes, straight up like attempting invasions, like sending troops. So for as long as the Cuban Revolution has existed, the U.S. government has been trying to destroy it, has been trying to attack it, has been trying to overthrow it. And so the intent behind the Venceremos Brigade was that we, as people living in the heart of the empire, we as people living in the snakes, have a responsibility to the Cuban Revolution and to the Cuban people to like stop that shit, to like show up in solidarity with them and to say it's not right. And to say like that this island, this nation is like an incredible model from the world that we should be learning from and not trying to destroy. And as long as we're paying taxes on this land, our taxes are going to like that kind of work in Cuba and all over the world. So it's really important for US citizens to like say we're not okay with that, even if we are made citizens by force, like most of the people on the call. So why is Cuba important? Like I said, they won. They waged a revolution against US imperialism, against colonialism, against capitalism, and they won. And then not only did they win, but they built a socialist society that was the complete antithesis of everything the US is. So just that example. And also it's like a majority, like colonized people's nation, like it's a majority African nation. So having this example of a nation that liberates itself, like very close to the US, like constantly just like forwarding, like just constantly throwing up the middle finger and saying like, we won, haha, like that, the US cannot have that exist. It's kind of similar to what happened with Haiti, when Haiti like waged the Haitian Revolution and defeated the French, and then French and the United States for like the rest of all time decided they had to attack Haiti because of what Haiti represented. Like Cuba is an example of what oppressed and exploited people working together can do to change their conditions. Like we have all the power, we just need to be organized. So again, the US government is attacking Cuba because Cuba represents an example that they cannot allow to exist. Like Roberto said, Cuba has free healthcare, Cuba has heavily subsidized housing, Cuba has free education all the way from preschool to college. Like Cuba has all of these things to provide for the basic needs of its citizens that we are told constantly in the United States are impossible. And meanwhile, Cuba is like much poorer than the United States. Cuba has like a fraction of the wealth of the United States. The difference is the priority, and the difference is a social system versus a capitalist system. So again, like living during the pandemic, obviously African people, indigenous people, Chicano people, like are getting mollywopped. Like we are suffering and dying in massive numbers, and there's no healthcare coming, there's no help coming, there's no resources coming in the richest empire on earth. And then just offshore in Cuba, there is universal healthcare. There's one of the lowest infection and death rates in the Western Hemisphere. There's all these examples of a much better way to do it, just like in the face of the United States. So clearly it has to go in the eyes of the United States government. So the blockade on Cuba is the longest system of sanctions that have ever existed in history. It has been ongoing for over 60 years. I believe it's 61 years at this point. It is a massive obstacle for the Cuban economy because it costs the Cuban economy $4 billion every single year. It makes it so they can't import necessary goods like fuel, like food. Like when you hear about bread lines, so-called bread lines in Cuba, it's because of the blockade. It's not because of Cuba, it's because of the United States. And they always leave that part out in the US news. So basically the blockade on Cuba is an extremely unfair, severe, and prolonged system of sanctions against this country to basically like make the people inside of Cuba suffer so much that they decide to overthrow their government. Obviously, it's been 60 years. That's not going to happen. But the United States is still applying this blockade and making Cuban people suffer. So yeah, just a recap of what I just said. The blockade has cost Cuba a lot of money over the course of 60 years. It prevents a lot of countries from doing trade with Cuba that would. Like a really recent example is that Cuba used to buy ventilators from a company that's based in the United States, but used to be owned by a foreign country. The US government bought that company and then canceled all of Cuba's ventilator orders during a pandemic. So that's like the kind of thing the United States does on a regular basis to Cuba that you probably don't hear about. They control the import of medical supplies, they control the import of basic necessities. And again, this most impacts like regular Cuban people, not the Cuban government, just like the regular Cuban people. So now we're gonna get into what we did on the VB to give y'all like a preview into what you would be experiencing if you went, which we really hope you will. So this is us. This is our group shot. This is in that like eco village. It was I don't know if we have another picture of it, but it was like a really, really cool intentional community where they were like planting, you know, they had like plants that were indigenous to the area. They were like reforesting. They were like cleaning the water. They had like a completely self-sustaining community that was intentionally eco-friendly. Someone's chatting at me. Oh, which slide do you see? I can't hear you. Oh, wait.
Sorry, why Cuba is important? Yeah, I think we're stuck on slide 4.
All right, let me stop sharing my screen.
Okay.
And then start again.
Just wanted to make sure everybody sees our awesome pictures.
I know, that was a really cute picture that I was talking about. Okay. How about now? Can you see what we saw, what we did?
Yeah,
Great.
you can see that. Perfect. Awesome. Thank you.
So yeah, this is the group shot at the eco village that I was just talking about, where we all look sweaty and happy. And then, did it change? I can't tell.
Yes, it did. It changed. You're good.
All right. So yeah, this is the, so we stayed at what's it called? It was like Jose Antonio Mejia Youth Camp. It was basically like a facility that the Cuban government set up for solidarity delegations. Yes.
Campamento Antonio Julio Mea.
Thank you, Antonio Julio Mea. Thank you so much. So yeah, so there was like beautiful artwork. It was basically like a resort with bunk beds. It was like really gorgeous. There was like avocado trees, mango trees, just like growing wild. There was like puppies. They fed us all meals for free. Like there was like the farms that we like got the food from that was cooked for us were like next to the camp, and so we would work there in the morning and then come back for programs in the night. It was just like a really idyllic experience.
And it was all organic food.
Yeah, and this is actually, you can see it in the next slide. Some of like the solidarity labor that we did. They had us picking green beans. They had us weeding. Don't tell me it didn't change. Okay, cool. All right. So yeah, they had us picking green beans. They had us weeding. We were put to work because we were there to like learn about Cuba, but we were also there, more importantly, to like show up in solidarity with Cuba, to like actually put in work to show our commitment to solidarity with Cuba. So it was really rewarding. And it's like really cool to like pick the food that you eat later that day. Like that will never not be cool to me. We also, we had like a lot of educational activities. Sometimes that was like seminars within the camp, but sometimes that was like day trips around Cuba. So we went to the Museum of Revolutionary History in Havana that I believe used to be like the president's palace when it was like under Batista. Is Batista the name? And they, after the Cuban Revolution, they like took it back and made it like a people's building instead of like a rich people's building. And they put this museum of the revolution in it. That was really incredible. That showed like from the earliest stages how these like regular ass people were able to organize an armed struggle that was successful. They also have in the little small picture on the right, it's the remains of an American warplane that was sent to Cuba during the Bay of Pigs invasion. Cuba, and that is really important to understand, the Bay of Pigs invasion was repelled by the Cuban people. It was like regular Cuban people who were organized to defend the revolution who were like, you're not gonna do this. They shot down the planes with improvised weapons. They like captured the soldiers. They like put that thing down, defeated the US military at a time when the US military was already one of the most formidable on the planet. So Cuba was like so organized and so committed to being free that they defeated the US military multiple times. And that was just one time. And then they kept the wreckage of the plane, which I find really funny. And yeah, this one of the improvised weapons we were talking about is the tractor tank. They literally repurposed a regular farming tractor into an armored vehicle. Sheldon, do you want to talk about it? Because I remember you were very excited about this.
No, I was just so pumped. Another similarity there because like how the Pueblo folks, we got tanks, we got tractors, and now we can have tanks.
You just got to nail some sheet metal on the sides. Look at it. I feel like I could help make it. So yeah, just showing that the brilliance, like Cuba is constantly denied resources, again, because the United States is attacking it, is blockading it. And then Cubans have developed incredible skills of improvisation and like collective problem solving. And this is an example of that, where they're like, we can't import tanks, so we're just gonna make on what we got. And it worked out. This is, so we had like a lot of seminars at the camp. So you'd wake up in the morning, we would work, and then we would come back to the camp, and then we would have a couple of these. And so these pictures are from dialogues with like Cuban citizens on race, queerness, identity, and the internet. So the big picture is the panel on race, and that's a number of Afro-Cubans, including a prominent professor and a member of one of the solidarity delegations to Africa, the international missions to Africa that Cuba has put on. And then the little picture is the representative from Senesex, which is Cuba's basically like public health, sex education agency. And he gave us like a great presentation on the work that Cuba is doing around LGBTQ rights and like gender identity and like, you know, making an analysis of queer identity and like acceptance of queer identity, like institutionalized in Cuban society, but like going into schools and businesses and talking to people. So those are really cool. Children's Hospital. I didn't actually go to this. Did someone do more?
I did. Well, I was there. Yeah, this was a really important day, I think, for a lot of us. This was in the province of Camagüey. And here we actually visited a children's hospital. This was the first hospital that I had actually visited in Cuba. This was during our 3rd week there. And I really just enjoy this picture because this is all the doctors and nurses there. And, it doesn't feel like a hospital. I'm sure many of us have gone to the medical system here in the US, and you're treated more as um, a number rather than a patient. So when we were there, we were taking a tour of the children's hospital, and one thing that really stuck out to me was that there wasn't just a bed in each room. There were 2 beds, so one for a family member and one for the patient. And you see like the doctors going around and conversing with their patients by first name, kissing them on the forehead. There's just a different well, the main thing in Cuba is that they actually believe in humanity, and so with that, and their celebration of the revolution every single day, they believe like their medical system is revolutionary work. You could hear that narrative, that unified narrative for that matter, from all of the Cuban brigades that went across the country to address a lot of the COVID-19 patients. This is their medical diplomacy program. They believe in the health and longevity of all people all over the world, and you could just really see that just in this one tiny hospital in Camagüey.
Thanks, Julia. Yeah. This was another really, this was one of the more transformative parts for me. So this was a panel of veterans of the Cuban Revolution and veterans of Cuba's international solidarity delegations. So if folks aren't watching, are not familiar, there was a period of great anti-colonial struggle in the 60s and 70s and 80s all over the world. And Africa was one of the hot spots where there were a lot of successful anti-colonial struggles waged around the same time. And Cuba's legacy in Africa is that when revolutionary African organizations, revolutionary anti-colonial and socialist African organizations reached out to the world to be like, yo, we need your help. These colonizers are dropping bombs on us. These colonizers are like we need support in order to wage the struggle. Cuba answered in a way that not many other parts of the world did. Actually, no one has really shown up for Africa in the way that Cuba has. Cuba sent thousands of troops. Cuba sent scientists, teachers, doctors to train people. Cuba showed up and was in Africa and took the leadership of African revolutionary socialist organizations. They weren't just this is how y'all got to do this because we know better than you. They were tell us what you need from us and we will do it. And so that's how they showed up. So it happened in Mozambique, it happened in Angola, it happened in Guinea-Bissau, it happened in Namibia, it happened in Azania or South Africa. Many places all over Africa that wage anti-colonial struggles were able to win them with Cuba's help. So Cuba will always have that legacy. That's the reason why I am extremely a big fan of Cuba, because they showed up for African people and they always have. So this panel was veterans of those delegations and also veterans of the Cuban Revolution. And it's really interesting because veterans in American society are veterans of wars that have been waged against people like me, people like us, to destroy our lands, to destroy our cultures, to steal our resources. So, veterans in the United States are sent around the world to do horrible things, and they come back and they're abandoned. And they have, because of that, because they're doing horrible things, because they have no support afterwards, they have an incredible amount of trauma. There's a really high suicide rate. Suicide rates, a lot of shame and pain for them because of the horrible things they're asked to do. But on this panel, there was pride. There was we are a force for good in the world. There was one of the Venceremos Brigadistas asked, she was like, you've seen so much war. How does that impact you? Can you sleep at night having seen all this violence? And the African man in green, who's the third from the left, his name is Victor Drake. If you don't know who he is, I recommend that you Google him. His last name is Dreke. He's an African revolutionary hero. He's a superhero to me. But basically, she asked him that question, and he said that I sleep fine. He said, I sleep fine because I knew that the work that I was doing was good and it was helping humanity. So the difference between a Cuban war veteran and an American war veteran was so clear in that panel, like the difference between Cuban society and American society was like so clear in that panel. Like a country that shows up for the most oppressed nations in the world and just like shows up in like humble solidarity, principled solidarity, versus a country that goes around the world like dropping bombs and stealing shit and killing like women and children and queer people. Like it was like, it's like the contrast between them was so clear in this panel, and it deeply impacted me. And also we climbed the Sierra Maestra and we saw the base camps where the guerrillas of the Cuban Revolution like waged the struggle, where they would retreat to, where they would like lay their heads. Like that was wild.
Yeah.
We climbed the whole mountain, the same mountain that like Che Guevara climbed, the same mountain like Fidel Castro climbed. It's just, it was a really beautiful experience. It's also really gorgeous, like you can see in the picture. It's very well taken care of. It's very beautiful. I felt very accomplished hiking up that mountain. So yeah. And if you come with us, you'll get to do it too. That's us again. So that's myself, Julia, and then Rachel, who is one of the, Rachel's on the third from the left. I guess the one on the right. So she is one of the leaders of the national Venceremos Brigade structure. So there's like the national VB, and then we have like regional VBs, like New Mexico regional, California has a regional, New York has a regional, Chicago, etc. So that's kind of how the VB is like structured very, very briefly, and then she's part of the national leadership. I did not go to this. Who wants to break it down?
Okay, I was here. So this was a picture in Guantanamo Bay, or like the province of Guantanamo. We met with the Youth Army of the Revolution. And, you know, typically, you know, this is very discouraged, you know, having US people meet with their military, but it was an important day for us because it really does contrast the difference between what an imperious military looks like versus like a military for the revolution. So in Cuba, 18 all males must serve, but they must serve for you know, a number of so years. But women, on the other hand, who do serve in the Youth Army of the Revolution, those are all volunteers, and there were a lot of like awesome Afro-Cuban women who had dope braids, and like, you know, they could wear their hair that they wanted to, and they were wearing makeup. You know, it's just like the difference between like again, US imperialist military and revolution military, the differences are just uncanny, and you can't even really compare the two. But this day we went and visited the occupation of the US empire at the Bay of Pigs, otherwise known as Guantanamo Bay. And to me, this day really resonated with me the most because I'm an Indigenous woman and I live on my territory, but all of Turtle Island is unceded Indigenous territory with US military occupation. The narratives are very similar. Give the land back, give the land back. And so when I was on this outing with the relatives during that day, you know, a lot of them are shaking their heads like, yeah, give them the land back, you know, give them the land back. And I'm sitting there and I'm just like, please, what you learn from this experience, bring back to the belly of the beast, because it does mean something when you are recognizing the territories that you are occupying, you know, whether you are a Maroon or whether you are a colonial, a white settler or a displaced Indigenous person or a displaced Chicano person. Learning about the territory that you're on is something that I think can resonate and can, you can compare those two experiences, like to Cuba and to the US, in actual liberation from the US empire. So that's what we did that day, and we got to see the Bay of Pigs and talk to the people, and, you know, really, how did US military and their presence impact people? You know, how did it impact like the community there in Cuba? Well, there was a lot of murders that happened to Cuban people that, again, the U.S. never apologized for. The Cuban government does receive a rent check from the U.S. Every month or so, but the Cubans pride themselves in that they will never cash that check until the land is given back, and then once the land is given back, they will then integrate all of that money back into education for the Cuban people there. So yeah, that was the experience there in Guantanamo.
Thanks, Julia. Can y'all still see the slide?
Yes.
Cool. Thank you. Hey.
And there I am flipping off the base there. It's just really beautiful country, and it's just so disgusting that U.S. and military is occupying this area. From this lookout point, I mean, you can see a lot. You can see where they house themselves. You can see golf courses where they recreate, where they shop. I mean, and if you look at that dirt road that's in between there, I mean, that's really like the line. That's the line that they designate from the base to Cuba. And then what's really even more disgusting on top of that is if you look more to the left of the screen and over that hill, that's where Guantanamo Bay Prison is, where atrocities against, that we couldn't even imagine are happening while, there's military recreating and playing golf on the other side. So, this is an occupation of the U.S. that has been there for far too long. They do talk Cuban diplomacy. They do have conversations with the Navy, but it's never to settle. It's always to give the land back and continue that conversation. So,
Great, thank you. Cool. So this was a really fancy reception that they held for us to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Venceremos Brigade. 50th anniversary means that for 50 years, every single year, the Venceremos Brigade has sent a solidarity delegation to Cuba. Sometimes that delegation, like our delegation, I think was like the first licensed trip, but usually it happens, in like an unlicensed way, meaning that you have to like fly into another country and then fly to Cuba and then like come back and it's like do a direct action. So ours were like the first licensed one, but usually they're unlicensed, and probably the 51st, I think it's like unconfirmed, but it may be unlicensed as well. That's something to know. And so at this reception, which was in Havana, at the ICAP office, and ICAP is the Institute of Cuban Friendship with the Peoples. They basically just like went over like the really beautiful history of the VB that Roberta broke down at the beginning of the meeting. They had members of the very first VB, like the one that happened 50 years ago there to speak. They had a member of the Cuban Five. The Cuban Five were Cuban political prisoners that were held and tortured in the United States until they were recently liberated, thanks to a lot of organizing around the world. Another really cool thing that happened at this reception is that, so context is that Cuba, in addition to, flying around the world and sending doctors, sending soldiers, sending money, sending resources to assist with anti-colonial struggles, to assist with liberation struggles, Cuba has also served as like a safe haven for freedom fighters, for revolutionaries. So Assata Shakur is probably one of the most famous. She was a former member of the Black Panther Party, a member of the Black Liberation Army, who was framed by the United States government for a murder that she did not commit of a state trooper on the New Jersey Turnpike. She, rather than like submitting to the US imposed sentence on her for a crime she did not commit, she was broken out of jail by her comrades and she fled to Cuba, and Cuba took her in. And Cuba has kept her safe, even though the US government has threatened them, has made the blockade more intense, has tried to bribe them by saying, we'll like lift the sanctions a little bit if you give her up, has basically done everything they could to get Cuba to give her up. And Cuba, from the very beginning and through to today, was like, we're never gonna do that. We're never gonna give her to you. And she's not the only one that they did that for. Like hundreds of people found refuge in Cuba. So they show up for freedom fighters. But so the picture on the right, the small one of the two African women, is Sophia Elijah. So that's the one with the close cropped hair. She is the lawyer of Marilyn Buck, or she was a lawyer of Marilyn Buck. Marilyn Buck has passed. Marilyn Buck was one of the people that helped break Assata Shakur out of jail. She was a European woman. She went to prison behind that on some of her other organizing work, and she never snitched. She was locked up for 3 decades, never told where Assata was, never told how it happened, kept her mouth shut. So yeah, an incredible woman. And Sophia Elijah is one of the people that worked really hard to make sure that the U.S. government could not torture Marilyn Buck while she was locked up. And the person standing next to Gloria Rolando Sophia Elijah is Gloria Rolando, who is the director of a documentary about Assata Shakur, one of the best ones, called Eyes on the Rainbow, and you can find the whole thing on YouTube. So this was like an accidental meeting of 2 people who were really close to a revolutionary African woman that I personally admired, that I was really excited to meet them. And that's why it's on this slide. Hey, this is when y'all met your friend. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll go ahead. So yeah, we had the homie here, Maceo, with his daughter. They just happened to be in Habana during that time we were there for the Venceremos welcome. And you know, it's just another great day when you have Chicano folks coming to Cuba and you get to hang out with each other. So you know, the roots, unknowingly, roots of Cuba run deep here too in New Mexico, and so we were just really happy that we had the brother and his daughter come and hang out with us, and you know, get a little bit of more information on the VB as well.
And Satiana was real excited that we're all from Albuquerque too, so we were talking about back home and what she does here and everything.
Cool. Yeah, this is just a cultural presentation they put on for us in Camagüey, which is a province of Cuba. It was African as hell, like all kinds of African cultural work, all kinds of African dancing and African music. Cuban culture, when you go there, like you have one perspective of Cuba based on, you know, seeing Fidel Castro. And Fidel Castro is definitely prominent in Cuban history and in Cuban culture. But Cuban culture itself is like African and indigenous. Like African and indigenous as hell. And it was like extremely obvious as soon as you get there. First of all, it's extremely obvious that the majority of the population is African. And secondly, you can see like the influence of our peoples and our struggles in like every part of Cuban society and also in the Cuban Revolution itself. Like the Cuban Revolution would straight up have not have happened if not for the anti-colonial struggles of African indigenous peoples like hundreds of years ago. So like you can see that reflected in Cuban society. I think that's Monica joining us. And you can see that reflected in the Cuban art and the Cuban culture. And on the picture on the right of the older gentlemen in like military uniforms is like a troupe that I believe like played music as youth during the Cuban Revolution. And so like they would be like in the forest, like playing music to make it seem that the armed Cuban forces were like much bigger than they were, and basically just like freaking out Batista's forces by creating like a musical distraction. So those folks are still around. Those folks are still committed to the Cuban Revolution. And so it was just really cool to see them playing the same songs that they did when they were boys fighting the Cuban Revolution. That was really dope. And what else? Okay, so that's the end of the presentation. Just some brief information about us before I turn it back to Julia. If you want to learn more about the Venceremos Brigade, go to the bbforcuba.com website. That's the official website of the Venceremos Brigade. And there you'll find articles a bunch of us wrote about our experience. You'll find pictures from the trips. You'll find the principles of unity that the Venceremos Brigade operates under, which are extremely important. You'll find all the information you'll need. And you'll also find a way to donate either one time or monthly electronically to support the Venceremos Brigade. So we're going to talk about this in a minute, but like we want to bring our people to Cuba, meaning African, Indigenous, and Chicano people. And that is like an expensive trip. So we understand that in order to make that happen, we are going to have to raise money. If we want the Venceremos Brigade to be diverse, to be reflective of the folks that are actually engaged in like liberation struggles right now, then we are going to have to raise a lot of money to make sure people can go. So please go to bbforcuba.com, check it out, get some more information, and also donate, and also share the link to donate. And then you can also find us on Facebook by finding New Mexico Venceremos Brigade Committee. If you're watching on live, you already found us. And then if you're interested in signing up for our mailing list, please message us your email on Facebook. So thank you. And I will stop sharing my screen and turn it back to Julia.
Awesome. That was so I always feel like I learn more every single time Oni talks about Cuba. It's just really great. But just to reiterate again, in terms of recruiting, we believe that all African, Indigenous, and Chicano people should have an experience like Cuba, not only to learn about the structures of Cuba and how, you know, the basically the rebirth of their country after liberating themselves from U.S. military, U.S. imperialism, and then, you know, and now what are they doing in terms of navigating from sanctions to other sort of economic blockades that the U.S. and then all of the U.S.'s allies are imposing on Cuba. So if you are interested in helping us out, you know, if you know somebody that is African, Indigenous, Chicano that you feel like would get something out of this experience, please send them our way. Also, if you would like to just help, you know, Chicano, Indigenous, African people, if you want to help us get to Cuba, there are other means and ways of doing that. I believe that Sheldon may be able to give us some more instructions in terms of how you can donate monetarily. So I'll go ahead and give that over to him.
Awesome. Thank you, Julia. Yeah, definitely. If you're looking to donate to our contingent or our committee, definitely check out the vbforcuba.com website, and they have a button there to donate. And when you're donating,
Do you want to share your screen, Sheldon? So maybe you can show people like how to navigate through the website and the proper instructions to donate to the New Mexico VB particularly.
sure, yeah, let me just bring it up.
Did you want to add anything, Roberto?
Yeah, just to say that we're inviting you to join us in these organizing meetings. This is what we do on a regular basis, and we'd like to invite you to join us. More importantly, we want you to go to Cuba with us. We're sending the 51st contingent at the end of the year. We don't have the dates yet. We don't know the cost. It's going to be around 2,000. We don't know for sure, but you are invited to join us and work with us. And we welcome you with open arms to work with us. It takes a lot of work, but it's really worthwhile. You'll never get an experience like going to Cuba. Doesn't matter where you go around the world. You get to see what Cuban international solidarity is about. We're seeing that now with COVID now. They're sending thousands of Cuban doctors and medical teams around the world to fight the virus. They're going to Italy, they're going to Germany. They're trying to get into the United States for like in indigenous lands. No health care. You know, we're trying to get them here too. And of course, the US government's stopping them from coming, but that kind of thing. Okay, back to you, Sheldon.
All good. Thank you, Roberto. Yeah, so I'll go ahead and share my screen real quick. All right, here we go. Cool. So this is the VB for Cuba page. When you get on, here you can scroll down, you can get more information. To donate, here you go, click this button and it'll reroute you to another page. And it'll bring you to this. It kind of, yeah, you can get more information here. Oh, let me just move my screen a little bit more. Cool, and you can make your donation recurring if you want. You can click that button there and that'll allow you to do so. From there, you know, you can click any of these donation ops, or you can put a customized one down there. Fill out all your card info, you know, it's pretty straightforward, your name, your address, all of these, but specifically here, when it comes to the memo, this is where you write something like, New Mexico committee or VB or something of that sort, and specifically just let folks know that this is for our contingent or our committee, and we'll go ahead and see it when that happens. And thank you to anybody donating as well.
And also, this is one way to support the VB. SWAP, Pueblo Action Alliance, we are nonprofit organizations. So any donations that you give, directly to us with a note that says for the VB, we'll ensure that gets to people. Just because, like everybody's been saying, we want to have a dope and big presence in Cuba. We were pretty awesome the last contingent and there was just 4 of us. So imagine if we were twice, 3 times that big. We have a lot of information as well, just coming from, whatever our backgrounds are. I know me and Sheldon really enjoyed educating our Cuban comrades on our revolution here in Tiwa territory of the 1680 Pueblo Revolt, being descendants from revolutionaries and, feeling the revolution every single day is something just very empowering, and you won't, it'll change you. It's like Oni has said, it's a transformative experience. Like Roberto said, you'll never be the same, and he's gone like 1,000 times. But please consider helping, our committee. We don't just want to go, we want to get other people to go. We want youth to go. We want everybody to go. And so with that, I just want to say thank you for listening in on us. A couple of just little logistics here at the end. We're having regular public meetings. And so we're doing the last Wednesday of every month. Since we're in, still shelter in place, we're doing Zoom meetings. So please look out for our events on either the New Mexico Venceremos Brigade Committee, look at the SWAP page, look at the All African People's Revolutionary Parties page, look at Pueblo Action Alliance page for any other updates on our upcoming meetings. So anybody's welcome to join, and yeah, that should wrap up our right at an hour today. So good job, everyone. And I think that should wrap up our meeting for today. And I'll just open it up to anyone else that would like to say something. But thank you, Herkem Shem, from me in Tiwa territory.
I'm frantically looking for our email address so that people can email someone else say something while I find it.
Yeah, just again, thank you to everybody who tuned in, everybody on the live stream. And again, if you have questions, you want to contact any of us, hit up the orgs. Again, that's Southwest Organizing Project, All African People's Revolutionary Party, Pueblo Action Alliance, and a lot of the .coms and things like that too are in the chat as well on the Facebook stream.
Cool. I will drop that email address in the chat when I find it.
Yeah, it's right there. I've got it.
Oh, thank you.
It's Venceremos Brigade at protonmail.com.
Cool. Dropping that in the chat right now.
Venceremos Brigade at protonmail.com. Or you can just message us here on our Facebook page.
Yes. Also follow our Facebook page.
We'd love to have you join.
Yeah, and just want to reiterate what Julia said. Like, we were a very strong but very small delegation from New Mexico on the Venceremos Brigade last year. We made a big impact. We made a lot of relationships, like tight homies, and we want to bring, like, New Mexico has so much to contribute to Cuba, and Cuba has a lot to contribute to New Mexico. So we want to bring a huge, diverse, young, like family-friendly delegation to Cuba this winter of 2020. And we really, in order to make that happen, we need folks to donate. We need folks to spread the word. We need folks to help us recruit. We need to we want to have at least 10 people on the New Mexico delegation to keep on the 51st Brigade.
And we'll take a few old people like me too.
Yes, exactly. We want elders, we want families, we want youth, we want African, indigenous, Chicano people. We want to represent New Mexico in Cuba strongly. So if you want to help with that.
I took two of my daughters at different times to Cuba with us in the Venceremos Brigade. And that was just so awesome sharing that experience with them and for them to remember that, you know, it's totally awesome. So bring your family, seriously.
So thanks y'all again for joining us. That's all I had.
Good evening. Be safe.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Thank you. We're going to be heading out here, but stay safe. Our prayers and blessings are with all of you, wherever you're tuning in from. And just remember, this nation-to-nation building with Cuba is for long-term goals in order to achieve revolution. So revolutionary hugs and kisses, and we'll see you soon.